I'm here to introduce Angeleen Wilson. She is a mother, a data wrangler, a DApp developer creating blockchain solutions in crop science and media industry, and also the children's education space. She has built communities like Georgia Blockchain Coalition. She has led DApp Hacks. Did I say that correctly? Oh, sorry. I'm not a developer. And DApp Hacks Hackathon and Atlanta Blockchain Week. She's the host of Women Blockchain in Atlanta. Everyone, please give a warm welcome to Angeleen Wilson.
Thank you for patiently waiting on me. It's like some block propagation. You sort of have to wait a minute. So I'm going to try to fill your time with some knowledge if you're not familiar with more Libra than Bitcoin. I'm assuming most people are more familiar with Bitcoin, but what fascinated me about Libra is what it's trying to do as a multi-unified global scale central blockchain. And I felt like it was important for all of us to understand that and sort of the background, and then we'll go through some comparison. So just giving you the agenda, where's Facebook today, why Libra, the 5 components of Libra, and then I'm going to give some comparisons through Libra and Bitcoin, and then go through some Q&A if we have some time. All right, to give you a little summary of the timeline, this is what fascinated me. If you're familiar with what Facebook has been through and is still going through in regards to scandals, it gives you a little timeline of where they were since 2018 and where they are now, as maybe sort of the background with Libra. March 18th, if you're familiar with the Cambridge Analytica scandal, Russian voting information, okay? I'm trying to be not biased, I'm just trying to give you the facts, and we go through some Q&A if you have some opinions about it. Then comes May 18th, 2018, and this is when blockchain, there's an initiative through Facebook, creating a center of excellence of talent throughout the industry of blockchain and coming together and I guess figuring out what they want to do. There's a lot of hype through the news about what they wanted to do, but it wasn't until December 2018 when they announced that they were going to utilize cryptocurrency for their $1 billion+ application they bought a few years ago called WhatsApp. Everybody use WhatsApp? Okay. I like it. Some people have some questions about it, but again, going to the facts that they were trying to find and align cryptocurrency with this unified global scale application that they have, which leads to June 2019, if you probably already heard in the news, Facebook announced Libra. And we'll go through those components in a minute. And that's when 2020 is when they're projecting to have their global coin launch. There's still some speculation about who's involved, who's committed, MasterCard, Visa, for example, PayPal. But the important part is this is happening. How do we sort of look at it, and what do we do when we compare with the existing technology? All right, again, a little bit of background about what I've been able to do some research on and behind of why they're creating this. And this is based off information, whether it's through their white paper or just some research I read through sort of what they let out in the media. By the numbers, there are 2 billion unbanked in the world. So what does this mean with those who are unbanked? There's women who make over half, Southeast Asia, 438 million unbanked, and then India with 190 million unbanked. And that doesn't even go across other countries. So this was, again, part of their scope of finding ways to look at it from an unbanked, sort of like what they did with Facebook. Everybody on Facebook? Okay. Ironically, it centralized us. We're all in different places on the internet. How do we come together? And I believe, based off what I can read, is that's sort of where they're going at to selling this, is by the numbers, through the unbanked, finding ways to use a scalable blockchain to come together, currency, and help build a new economic opportunity. Again, going back to what some research through the white paper, mobile broadcast and mobile broadband there's a percentage of people in India that have more broadband in their mobile usage than they do being banked. So this is, again, part of their white paper saying there's a $40 smartphone that someone will use, but they're unbanked. How can we put the two together and figure out a way to bring it everywhere and anywhere using this technology? And where they can leverage, again, this is just based off what I was reading. Not that I have an opinion about it, but this is just the results of how, again, the stats of people using mobile phones as 2018, 5.135 billion. Again, comparing the numbers with the unbanked. There's more people with phones than they are banked. So again, how are they cannibalizing on this technology? Well, they're trying to bring people that are unbanked with the technology they already have in their hand. All right, the 5 components of Facebook. Won't get too technical, but we have about 40 minutes. I'm going to try to go through some technical aspects. I am not a crypto trader, so I'm going to minimize my knowledge on that because it is small. But we'll go through the blockchain, their Libra Association, the governance, the smart contract, part of their language, the new language of move, the stablecoin aspect, and then the Libra consensus mechanism. All right, so the Libra Association. If you're familiar, obviously, with the governance that we have in our states and our local municipalities and in our country, there's a governance, and that makes up different people. Well, this idea with the Libra Association is aiming to have 100+ members as the association, which they're already onboarding for the launch of 2020, to make final decisions with the association. Now, right now, Facebook is making those decisions. This is 2019, but the whole idea is to build a leadership to govern the direction, not just the technology, but utilizing it and who it's going to be more avidable for. The Libra Association right now the goal is once the network launches, all the members will have the same commitments, privileges, financial obligations as the founding member. And at the end, I'll go sort of what those requirements are to be a member, because it's not as easy as it sounds. All right, Calibra. I don't know if it was just something that fell off their tongue and they decided to call it that, but if you hear people, it's the Calibra Libra. This is sort of what the framework looks like as a digital wallet when interacting with the Libra before it launches. This is where the best research I can find right now. But just to give you a scope, you send the Libra using your smartphone. Again, going back to the WhatsApp. You send those funds through your Calibra wallet. Everybody got a digital wallet with cryptocurrency? Don't sound too excited? Okay. Get used to this, obviously, if you don't have one already. But these payment providers, again, going back to MasterCard, Visa, PayPal, Stripe, they're on board. So this is going to be an easy window for them to be able to utilize from the back-end server aspect for this wallet, because you have the partnership. So, saw the framework. Now, currently, looking at the blockchain on the back end from that wallet, it's currently being built as permissioned. The goal in time is speculative, is going to be permissionless, like Bitcoin is. It's the ability to scale billions of transactions, which we know Bitcoin is not necessarily able to do. Again, skepticism around that, but the high capacity, the latency, the ability to manage as a governance on how to make sure the technology is behind this digital wallet as a product. If you're familiar with the Merkel Tree, I won't go too deep dive into this, but this is part of where they're going as a scope for the smart contract. Based off, if I were to say, maybe this is a good idea, maybe this is not, and what they're doing, Bitcoin, and like I said, I'll go into in the comparison slides, they don't have necessarily a plan to have a limit of Libra, right? Bitcoin already has that. So whether this is going to be able to track this with the scalability they're looking at as a central blockchain, that's for them to find out and for us to find out as well if we're product users. The authenticator value with these smart contracts, it's similar to the block hash in a normal blockchain. The authenticator, the validator, is a transaction dependent in the authenticator of the previous transaction. Again, if you're familiar with blockchain, it replicates information from the previous one. No necessarily different, however, the whole goal for Libra is to be able to scale information when it's making transactions through their wallet and sending it through the sender. All right, the reserve. I'm going to touch this a little bit on the stablecoin. Again, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not going to give you advice on this, but based off my knowledge, it's to bring stability. In other words, for every time there is something that you send in value, it's bringing the stability of what it's worth right now, for example, in US dollars. Bitcoin, as you know, is volatile. So this, again, is bringing the terminology of scalability and having a banknote per se, of backers based off the currency to be able to translate what the value is. Going back to central banks, a lot of people are wary about what Facebook could do as a central authority, but again, this is where they're trying to justify the association that they've created as the governance. Pegs. If you're familiar with a fixed rate exchange, we're not going to go too deep dive, or a peg exchange, this is where it's a fixed value. Again, going back to bringing stability of the value of what that Libra coin token, and then how the wallet will replicate the information for you when you're exchanging. Stability by design, again, going to the term of stability, helping with the fluctuation of operation costs, keep low transaction fees, and pay dividends to the investors equals the Libra Association. The consensus mechanism, the Libra BFT. There's a big, they call it the classical consensus of what they're necessarily using. They call it the simpler way of voting and settling the majority for the consensus and the well-being of the consensus. This is sort of the direction they have been going in, but again, right now they're being permissioned, so we will see through the development finalizing their launch probably in the next 5 years, and this could change. Going back to, again, what I mentioned as validators, utilizing these nodes and charge the block production. If you can see where the client, sort of like the access control into the admission control, and where the storage is, this is, I don't want to say it's too different from what we currently have as a classical consensus, but again, they're just trying to figure out a way to bring low-cost transaction process and low cost to them, because these Libra Association have to pay a chunk to be a part of this, and having those validators to be able to be a part of this, those Libra Association governance, it's just helping to maintain the majority votes and the validators to get the block approved. And so it begins. If you've heard a little bit of Hashgraph, anybody familiar with Hashgraph? Okay. I was going to put it on here, but there's a joke. Hashgraph says, "Hey Libra, you sort of like mimicking us." It's gossip. It's a round of communication through the protocol to randomly select the next track of information. I don't want to say that this is true, that they copied it. It was actually something they utilized through called Hot Stuff from VMware. That's where it's very similar to what Libra's doing. Hashgraph jokes that it's sort of similar to their gossip mechanisms that they're using through their protocol. Okay, so again, want to go through the important aspect of being a part of this. Everybody thinks, oh, there's a governance. What does that mean? Going back to the MasterCards, the PayPals, the Visas. Some people have an idea that the enterprise at scale, being a part of a project like this, could sort of minimize the whole idea of being centralized and taking away the central authority. But these are the requirements to be a part of this association and governance. $1 billion in US dollars, not that they give that, but they have to prove that they are in the market value. This means cash flow. Being able to reach more than 20 million people a year intentionally. They have to obviously have a big name in the space from, I guess you want to quote unquote, a trust, and be recognizable as a leader for the third party association. And this, again, is going towards what they have the idea now as the association. Nobody really knows what they're going to have the expectations for once it's launched. This is where the comparison comes. Trying to simplify it real quick. Bitcoin, decentralized, as I mentioned before. Libra has a decentralized blockchain governance, that Libra Association, to help make transactions more scalable, faster. And right now it's permissioned. And that is only because right now, through this authorization of these entities, it's helping to build those founding members as validators. Again, the speculation is 2020 comes around and may eventually, maybe in the next year or two, be permissionless with comparison to Bitcoin, which Bitcoin is permissionless. It's fixed supply of coins, where Libra, again, it's an open bag of fiat currency to compare the fiat pool value, and then it goes out to the exchanger that's using their wallet. So if you, for example, when you use dollars, euros, pounds, francs, it's going to correspond with the value at that time for that current currency. That's what we call a banknote. because there's a backer backing that value. And again, going back to what I mentioned before, as a stable coin. This is a really good thing I found on Crypto Potato. If you're familiar with them, they get a pretty good comparison, sort of what I was iterating before. There's centralization in Libra, decentralization in Bitcoin. The value is the price of Bitcoin is not dependent on any single permanent way, as opposed to Libra, who's bringing stability to the value of what they're trying to exchange through their crypto wallet. Bitcoin, economic scarcity. Libra is trying to be a trust and user, sort of like what we still see in value with our US dollar. Gold, that's why I guess they call it the Bitcoin as the digital gold, is there immediate value to it. Libra, again, going back to the note of a banknote, there's backers behind it, and that sort of governs the value of the currency that they're going to use. Again, going back to the security part of Libra. The security part of Libra is what they're saying is the value that's dependent, again, on how they're being the intermediary to replicate the blocks and the value of each currency that you exchange it for. Again, going back to the Merkel Tree, Libra is tractable. There's not necessarily a limit of the volume that it could create. Bitcoin, 21 million that we currently have noted that is not in the transaction yet as the single block. It just means that there is a defined volume for Bitcoin. There's not for Libra. So is this the best design? There's still speculation about it, but this is what they're looking at for the design of how they're creating the back end. Again, going back to what Bitcoin, if you're familiar with the language and what I guess, again, speculation as to why they created the Move programming is a little bit more intuitive when you create through their Move program, which I'll share with you. But I guess the whole key is to be able to build a unified, multi-scalable, global entity for people to rely on using cryptocurrency. That wasn't necessarily the idea with Bitcoin, utilizing it as a transaction of money, whereas they're seeing this as a transaction of value and being able to record it with blockchain. Based off what I've read, again, I want to try to keep this very factual because I have my opinions about it. We're going to have this open source. The developer can be a part of the direction of the technology. Not so much right now. Just like the Libra Association, you've got some big names in there, which is great for adoption. I work for Enterprise, Bayer Corporation, and I worked for Turner previously, so I see it from an enterprise perspective. However, the purpose of what Bitcoin was created for is different from what they're trying to scale. They're trying to reach people like they sort of did with Facebook. That's why I was going back to the initial comparison. Sort of answer that from a hash data pairing, going back to the Merkel. Right now, they say it's open source, but from what I can see, they're still sort of closed door on how they're going to launch this for 2020. That helps. Like I said, I have a few slides I took out because they were told me it was an introduction, but I'm happy to share. You got to understand difference with media, looking for investors, looking for the governance model, and then what they're really going to do for 2020 and beyond that. Again, based off what I read when I was doing my research, they want developers to be a part of it, but they're not necessarily opening the door for them to participate in the direction of the technology just yet. And that was as of a week ago. Something could have changed, if that helps. I mean, I hate to say it, look what blockchain's done, creating auditing roles. You can become a contract auditor, being able to audit smart contracts and getting paid for it. I don't want to say it's the similar model for a bug bounty, but it is smart to sort of open that door, sort of like what they're doing with their Facebook challenge that they're having, their Facebook circles that they're having within Atlanta alone. I've gone to a few events. They haven't opened that door for Libra, but I feel like they're sort of gauging themselves. I'm not trying to compare them to AWS, but I really feel like they're trying to build a technology suite for people to use. Merkel Tree is, by design, hashing, pairing data, being able to reflect that data through a hash tree, through the child of information, through different hashes of where it resembles and tracks. Trying to explain this the best way when I was comparing with Bitcoin, there's a volume set, right? So you're going to be able to track that information a little bit more inherently and be more intuitive, because you're expecting how you're going to be able to track it based off the volume we know will be towards this. It's the scope of 21 million blocks, right, through blockchain. Libra, it's tractable, but there's no ceiling, right? And that's where my opinion is this may hurt them using a Merkel tree in the long term. I'm not saying Merkel tree, I love, Merkel, but just understanding the structure and being able to history of transactions through these attributes may hurt them because there's no volume. We don't know, they're expecting it to last for a long time, right? And that's a product that they're looking at this as a product. Bitcoin wasn't necessarily a product. It was a way to take out, it was using as a purpose, as a functionality. Yes, it's a functionality as Libra, but the whole idea behind it is to be able to use it as a product through their Calibra wallet, right? In my opinion, I don't know, but I know that they're gonna have to really make sure that they have a scope on the development of this as it scales out, that they say it will once they launch it. And I really feel like, again, being a developer, I really feel like these type of initiatives, the one you just mentioned that got launched yesterday or announced, is very important, because I feel like the developers are going to be the close relationship on where the direction will from the long term. They already have a development scope. They have a team. I'm sure it's going to grow, but the whole idea is taking that off the Facebook responsibility. If they're really going to be true to utilizing the governance and then the technology model of open source. Answer your question on Libra itself. I'm sort of weary to the fact that they do have big names, but I also like it, again, coming from a corporation, there's a lot more to it than just becoming a validator. Do we trust that these corporations have the best interest? That's a question, but I do like the number of 100. And if you're looking, I took this off, but there's a variety of different types of industries involved and still being onboarded, but there's speculation from a stability standpoint in my mind, because how can they say that it's going to be stable, and will this hurt us or them if they're promising that before it's launched? But that's my opinion. Again, I don't want to deter anybody, but I do see that there is a good thing in regards to adoption, but I do see that there's a bad thing in regards to what this looks like for the technology itself and why we're using it. I want to give you an example of what, the hash and then pairing the data through a Merkel tree. Bitcoin, again, utilizing the Merkel tree, there's a volume. So there's a set transaction base. Libra, there's nothing. So being able to track this information as a child from one hash, creating from the parent of the initial hash, is that really scalable for what they're trying to build with unlimited amount of transactions? That's the ledger of data. That is based off what I was reading, sort of what you said. That is the most up-to-date information, almost like a query that you can be able to view and track. But like I said, there's no ceiling there with Libra. So that's where I'm like, okay, I hope they have some type of auditing measure and layer, and I'm sure they do, to be able to make sure that this is coherent with the purpose of designing a Merkel tree for this, as opposed to what Bitcoin has utilized it for. Has Facebook overcome anything? I mean, they're still talking about the Cambridge Analytica, right? The scandal with, we're about to come up with another election. I feel like this is the US. We go in, they go to Congress, they come out, and they're continuing to operate. They get fined. They got fined, what is it, $5 billion? Following his Congress session about Libra. It wasn't necessarily directed like here. It was like a ticket, like, we can get you for something. We're not going to stop you. It was like a slap on the wrist. Not to say $5 billion is not a lot, but that's just a portion of what they're worth right now. Think of $50 billion, then they would have been in trouble. Regulation-wise, I think that's why they haven't been really in the news. You just sort of hear little plugs of, the bug initiative and what others are doing to be on board with them. But I do feel like there's a lot of other companies that are not on board with them, that are playing the media to help let others know that there still needs to be speculation if you decide to speculate. I'm not an expert in regulation. I have friends that are lawyers, and that's what that is for them. I learned from them a lot. But again, it's like, is this taking away the purpose of this technology, or is it going to help adoption? We won't know until I feel like it's launched and you give it 2 years initially. But Facebook is still running. People have sort of forgiven it. Again, I feel like the US forgives very easily. I'm not saying on everything, but look at that. That could have really affected us. Who knows? And we have another election coming up. What if something happened again? Would we continue to forgive their leniency on whose information they're giving our information to? That helps. I think regulation is subjective in regards to opinion right now. Well, did you see Gemini? Gemini's like, hey, let's be a part of the Libra, which is counterintuitive because of their relationship, the Winklevoss, and then them creating a stability with Gemini, and then them saying, okay, I want to open the door and sort of find a way back in with Facebook, and this is Libra. That, again, I just feel like they're being smart of what information they're putting out there. I don't think they even know. I work in an enterprise. We're building something, and every day something changes. And media, again, I just left Turner Broadcasting before this current position. Media plays a lot in our opinions, and it's just what you decide to read and all the research you want to do to make sure you can back up your opinion first. Well, thank you for being patient. Sorry for the delay in getting this up, me dropping this, never used this. But I can send more of the information on the MOVE program and some of those that are now on board as part. I guess some of them have not officially become the governance, but they're in discussion. So they have a whole graph on that as well. Thank you.